Imagine a darkness so vast that even light seems hesitant to cross it, a silence so ancient it predates language, sound, or memory. Suspended within this void, great spirals of stardust turn elegant, slow, deliberate. These are galaxies, each one a colossal structure of hundreds of billions of stars, weaving across the cosmos like glowing whirlpools, adrift in the ocean of the universe. And yet, even these giants are not still, they move, they drift, they fall toward one another, drawn by the silent hand of gravity in a dance that began long before we opened our eyes to the sky. Somewhere beyond the reach of our sun's warmth, in a realm of cold and cosmic distance, a collision is unfolding not with the fury of explosions, but with the grace of inevitability. Two galaxies, colossal and serene, are slowly approaching each other across millions of light years. It is not a clash of violence, but of geometry, time, and gravity. A slow-motion embrace that will take billions of years to complete, and yet will forever alter the shape of everything within them. And so we begin here not with destruction, but with transformation. Oh, and before we dive deeper into this galactic journey, pause with me for just a moment. If you're listening to this beneath a night sky or from the soft glow of your room, let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you? And what time is it where you are right now? I'd love to know. And if this voyage across time and stars speaks to your curiosity, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this cosmic exploration. Alright, now let's go deeper. The Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest spiral neighbor, is on a slow but inevitable path toward us. At approximately 2.5 million light-years away, Andromeda might seem safely distant, but space is not as static as it appears. Every second, it draws nearer, carried along not by some external force, but by gravity itself, the invisible architect of the universe. It approaches us at about 110 kilometers per second, silent and relentless, a speed we cannot feel in the motion of our daily lives, yet one that promises a future so far-reaching that it reshapes how we think about time. Astronomers estimate that in about 4 billion years, the Milky Way and Andromeda will meet not as titanic wrecking balls, but as interwoven spirals dancing around each other, stars swinging in vast arcs, like glowing fireflies caught in a gentle whirlwind. Contrary to what intuition might suggest, the stars within these galaxies are unlikely to collide directly. They are too far apart relative to their size. The Earth, the Sun, and our solar system may pass through this celestial event unharmed, swept along like leaves on the surface of a vast, invisible river. Yet, though individual stars may avoid direct collision, the gravitational interactions will be profound. Entire stellar systems will be flung into new orbits. Clouds of gas and dust, the raw materials of star formation, will be compressed, igniting a surge of newborn stars, lighting up the dark like sparks. It is in these collisions that galaxies reshape themselves, and from apparent chaos, something new is born. There is a beauty in this inevitability. Galaxies are not eternal in their form. They twist, merge, fade, and reform. Their shapes dictated not only by mass and motion, but by ancient interactions now long forgotten. What we see in the sky is not a permanent fixture, but a moment captured in a process that spans eon. Our own galaxy, majestic though it is merely a phase, a temporary flourish in a cosmic process of endless reinvention. And yet, to even begin to understand what this collision means, we must step back and grasp the sheer scale of what a galaxy truly is. The Milky Way alone spans over 100 light-years in diameter, a size so large that a beam of light, the fastest thing we know, would take 100 millennia to cross it. Inside it, more than 200 billion stars shine, each perhaps with its own family of planets, moons, and frozen relics, a silent multitude of worlds, some perhaps with oceans, atmospheres, storms, even life. Andromeda is even larger, containing perhaps 1 trillion stars. These numbers stretch the limits of imagination, and yet they are real as the ground beneath your feet, real as your own heartbeat, which is itself timed by the subtle pull of gravity and the rotation of a small, rocky planet around an average star in an unremarkable spiral arm of an ordinary galaxy. But what is remarkable, what is extraordinary, is that we are here to witness any of this at all. That consciousness has emerged in the midst of this swirling grandeur, capable of looking up, asking questions, and imagining futures far beyond the scale of a single human life. This collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda, sometimes called Milkomeda, a name coined with quiet reverence by astrophysicists, will not be the end of either galaxy. Rather, it will be a continuation, a reshaping, a fusion. New arms may unfurl, central bulges may swell, and black holes, including the supermassive ones at the hearts of each galaxy, may spiral toward one another, eventually merging in a final, thunderous ripple of gravitational waves. These waves, predicted by Einstein's general theory of relativity and confirmed a century later by LIGO in 2015, are not sounds in the traditional sense, but ripples in the very fabric of space-time. They carry information across the void, like the soft ringing of a bell struck in the darkness. And should the black holes of Andromeda and the Milky Way meet and merge, the resulting gravitational waves would be among the most powerful events the universe has ever known, silent to the ear, but felt across creation. But what would this mean for us, the inhabitants of a small blue planet orbiting a star that itself is caught in the gravity well of this spiral dance? In one sense, perhaps nothing at all. The timescale is so immense that long before the galaxies meet, the Earth may be unrecognizable. The continents will have shifted, climates transformed, even the sun will have evolved, brightening and swelling as it marches slowly toward its own eventual end. Life, if it still exists, may have changed or departed altogether. Yet in another sense, it means everything. Because knowing that such a collision will happen, and that it is part of a natural rhythm, reminds us that we are not separate from the cosmos. We are shaped by it. Every atom in our bodies, every breath we take, every story we tell, is a consequence of stars, long dead and galaxies in motion. When galaxies collide, they do not simply end, they become something more. They exchange matter, momentum, memory. They merge histories and futures into a new expression of what a galaxy can be. And though the process may take billions of years, its beauty lies in its persistence, a slow, unhurried transformation that echoes the very nature of the universe itself. Perhaps, in the grand perspective, galactic collisions are not catastrophes at all, but necessary awakenings, moments when the universe stretches its limbs, shifts its form, and prepares for a new chapter in its long, slow breath. And so we watch, we measure, we imagine, because somewhere in that future sky, long after our names have been forgotten, two spiral arms will begin to touch, not as enemies, but as dancers in a cosmic ballet choreographed by gravity, time, and the silent longing of the stars. The night sky above us appears so still, a quiet canvas speckled with starlight, each point a reminder of distances so vast that time itself seems to stretch and thin in their presence. Yet, beyond this gentle illusion of silence, the universe is always moving. Galaxies twist, stars pulse, invisible winds of radiation blow across cosmic planes, and in the background, steady and patient gravity continues its silent orchestration, bending destinies of worlds we will never know, shaping futures we can only imagine. The eventual collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda is not an isolated event. It is, in truth, a common and essential rhythm of the cosmos. Galaxies are not solitary wanderers. They belong to families, to clusters and superclusters, bound together in a delicate web of gravitational influence. Collisions, mergers, and gravitational dances between galaxies have been occurring for billions of years. In fact, they are part of the very mechanism by which galaxies grow, evolve, and mature. Our own Milky Way has devoured smaller galaxies before silent feasts absorbed over eons. Evidence of these ancient mergers lies in the stars that now move in strange orbits, in stellar streams that arc like ghostly rivers across the sky. The Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, for instance, is currently being stretched and consumed by the Milky Way's gravity, its stars becoming part of our own galactic halo. It is a reminder that our home is not untouched by violence, but sculpted by it, molded not through destruction alone, but through absorption, integration, and rebirth. Andromeda, too, bears scars of ancient mergers. Observations suggest that it, like the Milky Way, is a galactic cannibal having already consumed dozens of smaller companions in its journey through space. These processes are slow and invisible from our perspective, but their effects echo through time, etched into the structure of galaxies like the faint lines of a memory, half forgotten but never erased. When galaxies collide, what we witness is not chaos, but choreography. Their spiral arms vast and luminous twist and warp, stretched by tides of gravity into elongated tails. These tidal tails, sometimes hundreds of thousands of light years long, carry stars, gas, and dust into arcs that shine with the faint glow of scattered light. They are like the trails of dancers caught mid-motion, remnants of an encounter that leaves both partners changed. Astronomers have captured glimpses of these encounters across the cosmos. The antennae galaxies, for example, located some 45 million light-years away in the constellation Corvus, show two spiral galaxies caught mid-collision, their shapes distorted, their centers glowing with intense regions of star formation. Another pair, the Mice galaxies, display long, trailing tails, evidence of gravitational interactions tearing at their structures as they slowly merge. These snapshots, taken by telescopes orbiting Earth, are not just images of distant phenomena. They are time machines, windows into what once was, and perhaps what will be. When we observe these colliding galaxies, we are seeing echoes of our own future, frozen in light that left its source millions of years ago. We are witnessing what the Milky Way and Andromeda may become, a celestial preview offered by the universe if only we know how to read it. But within these grand, slow-moving catastrophes, another process unfolds, one even more delicate and more profound: the birth of stars. When galaxies collide, their interstellar gas clouds are compressed. This pressure, combined with turbulence and the cooling of the gas, leads to the rapid formation of new stars, bursts of stellar creation ignited by the gravitational chaos. These are not solitary births, but collective ones, whole clusters of stars coming into existence like glowing embers fanned by an unseen wind. Some of these newborn stars will live short, brilliant lives, ending in supernovae that seed the surrounding space with heavier elements, the raw ingredients of planets, oceans, and perhaps, one day, life. It's a paradox so characteristic of the cosmos that from destruction can come such beauty, that collisions, which seem so violent in concept, are also midwives to light and possibility. Perhaps it is not so different from life itself, which often emerges through disruption, through change, pressure, and the reshaping of what once was into something altogether new. And yet, while the physical dance of galaxies is grand and observable, it is the implications for us, the thinkers, the dreamers, the watchers, that invite the most reflection. Because if galaxies collide and reform as a natural part of cosmic evolution, then what does that say about permanence, about identity, about the nature of things we assume are fixed? It was Carl Sagan who reminded us that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. And if that is true, then watching galaxies merge is not a detached curiosity, but a form of self-reflection. We are stardust, born of stars that once burned and died in collisions, far older than our species, shaped by elements forged in the hearts of long-extinct giants. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, the carbon that strings our memories together, all of it is cosmic inheritance, passed through fire and silence, through gravity and light. We are the consequence of galactic collisions, not metaphorically, but literally. And as we look forward to the meeting of the Milky Way and Andromeda, we might also look backward, not to history, but to origin. Because the structures we see now were shaped by ancient meetings, by forgotten dances that stretched across time before Earth had even formed. It is possible that the conditions for our very existence, the birth of the Sun, the formation of our planet, were set in motion by a galactic merger long ago, one that triggered the birth of our parent star. If this is true, then the upcoming collision is not a threat, but a continuation. A reminder that we belong to a universe that is always in motion, always reinventing itself, even on scales that make our lives seem brief and weightless by comparison. And what of the stars themselves, those luminous points that will be flung into new orbits, scattered or drawn inward during the merger? Some may find themselves exiled, flung into the intergalactic void, doomed to wander alone through emptiness. Others will be drawn closer to the galactic center, where the twin supermassive black holes, one from each galaxy, will spiral toward each other over millions of years. As they dance, They will emit gravitational waves that ripple across space-time, silent and perfect, like the tolling of a bell no ear can hear. And eventually, they will collide not with a sound, but with a shiver in the very fabric of the universe. The energy released by such a collision is difficult to comprehend. For a brief moment, it can outshine all the stars in the universe combined, not in visible light, but in gravitational waves, bending space itself like ripples in a cosmic lake. Detectors like LIGO and Virgo have already captured such echoes from black hole mergers, much smaller than this future event, whispers from dark places, now heard for the first time in the history of life. But if we are still here, if some form of humanity or its descendant consciousness remains, we might not just observe the merger, we might witness it. We might build instruments capable of visualizing the process, of tracing the warping of space, the shifting of stars, the changing contours of a galaxy remade. It could be the most beautiful thing ever seen by eyes born of Earth. Or perhaps we will be gone by then, not vanished, but transformed. Perhaps we will have become something else, scattered across space ourselves, like the stars that once knew a different sky. And that may be the quiet truth at the heart of all this, that we are not permanent, but transitional. That galaxies, too, are impermanent. That even structures as vast as these spirals of stars must one day yield to time and to change. It is not a sad thought, only a reminder, that in the great story of the universe, nothing is lost. Everything is carried forward, reshaped, remembered, even as its name is forgotten. And so, as the Milky Way and Andromeda approach one another, as they drift closer, slower than any clock can measure, we find ourselves suspended between what has been and what will be, watching, wondering, bearing witness. Not to an end, but to a transformation. Somewhere, on a clear night, a child may look up and see a faint smudge of light in the sky, Andromeda, glowing softly above the horizon. And perhaps, without knowing why, they will feel a pull, a curiosity, a question. And that question will be enough to begin the journey all over again. In the tapestry of the cosmos, time is not measured in hours or days, but in rotations of stars around galactic cores, in the slow migrations of galaxies across the boundless dark, in the lifespan of light itself traveling through vacuum toward eyes that may never open to receive it. Within this unfathomable scale, our moment, the thin layer of seconds and centuries we call history, becomes almost translucent, barely a thread in the weave, and yet, somehow, full of meaning. As the Milky Way and Andromeda draw closer in their ancient arc, there is a strange comfort in knowing that we are part of this motion. Not above it, not separate from it, but entirely contained within it, every atom, every thought, every silence between breaths moving along with the galaxy that shelters us. It is a reminder that even stillness is an illusion, that behind the appearance of stability lies the ever-shifting architecture of the universe. Though the night sky may appear unchanged to the casual gaze, the truth is that it is in flux. Andromeda, that faint smudge seen from Earth with the naked eye on moonless nights, is growing ever so slightly brighter, not because it burns more fiercely, but because the space between us and it is shrinking, pulled inward by the invisible thread of mutual gravity. In a few billion years, it will fill the sky not as a menace, but as a second Milky Way, hanging luminous and tangled in the heavens, like a mirror galaxy reflecting our own. There is poetry in this convergence, two spirals drawn toward each other across the abyss, not out of violence, but out of inevitability. And perhaps this is the deeper lesson buried in such cosmic events, that even the most profound transformations begin with gentle motion, with a drift, with a silent curve set in motion, long before anyone could have seen it coming. To understand this more deeply, we must consider the forces at work beneath the visible. Gravity, which we often picture as a pulling force, is in truth a bending, the warping of space and time itself around mass. As Einstein revealed in his general theory of relativity, space is not an empty container, but a fabric that can twist, ripple, and fold. Massive bodies like galaxies cause deep depressions in this fabric, like marbles resting on a stretched sheet. When two galaxies approach, they fall into each other's wells, not falling down, but falling through. This journey toward merger is not a straight line, but a spiraling path, an ever-tightening orbit, as each galaxy feels the tug of the other more strongly with each passing million years. They swing around one another, their shapes distorting, stars arcing outward into long plumes and tails, black holes drawing ever closer at their centers. And what of those black holes? At the heart of both the Milky Way and Andromeda lies a supermassive black hole, a region of space so dense, so compact, that not even light can escape its grasp. Ours is known as Sagittarius A, a relatively quiet monster, 4 million times the mass of the Sun. Andromeda's black hole is even more massive, perhaps 100 million solar masses, a gravity well so deep it distorts the path of stars thousands of light years away. When these two black holes meet, and it will be one of the most magnificent, silent events in the history of this corner of the universe. They will circle one another in a deadly ballet, radiating energy in gravitational waves, spiraling inward over millions of years until they merge into a single, even more massive black hole at the heart of a new galaxy. The universe, it seems, always recycles its extremes, building ever more intricate structures from what seems like loss. This cosmic fusion will leave behind not just a new galactic core, but a new galactic identity. The resulting galaxy, predicted to be an elliptical form rather than a spiral, will be larger, more spherical, and smoother in shape. The elegant arms of the Milky Way will be gone, as will the symmetry of Andromeda, replaced by a golden glow of old stars spread more evenly throughout space. Yet even as structures change, as forms are erased and rewritten, the stars themselves and their orbiting planets may endure. Scientists believe that while the galactic merger will disrupt the orbits of stars and clouds of gas, the probability of two individual stars colliding is remarkably low. This is because, on stellar scales, space is mostly empty. If the Sun were the size of a marble, the nearest star would still be several kilometers away. Still, the disruption of gravity on a galactic scale can have profound consequences. Some stars will be thrown into new orbits. Others may be flung into the intergalactic void, exiled into eternal isolation. Entire planetary systems could find themselves adrift, torn from their stellar hosts, or launched into new trajectories through the cosmos. One cannot help but wonder, could life, somewhere in the folds of Andromeda or the Milky Way, survive this journey? Could it bear witness? We tend to think of life as fragile, clinging to rare conditions, threatened by change. But perhaps, in the greater expanse of the universe, life is also adaptive, persistent, quietly evolving beneath surfaces we do not yet know how to read. If intelligent life exists elsewhere, if beings of thought and memory have risen on some distant world, circling a distant star, then it is possible that they too gaze at the slow dance of galaxies, wondering, calculating, imagining what the collision will bring. And perhaps they have reached the same conclusion we must now face, that we are not apart from the universe, but expressions of it. That our thoughts are no less cosmic than the motion of galaxies, both governed by the same fundamental rules, both born of the same origin. It is tempting to romanticize the collision, to see it as a metaphor, and perhaps it is, for change, for union, for the blending of separate histories into something altogether new. The universe, after all, does not draw a line between science and poetry. It simply is, and it is we who interpret. This upcoming event, though distant in time, invites us to expand our perception of time itself, to think not in lifespans or dynasties, but in epochs and revolutions, to understand that the universe is not waiting for us, but that we are always within it, always arriving, always in motion. Even now, the Earth moves around the Sun moves around the center of the Milky Way moves toward Andromeda, and the entire local group of galaxies is drifting through space toward an even larger structure, the Virgo cluster, and beyond that, the mysterious Great Attractor. It is all motion, all journey, all unfolding. And so, in this knowledge, there is something deeply grounding, a kind of peace. Because if galaxies can merge, and stars can be reborn, and black holes can collide, and still give rise to order, then perhaps we too can accept the transformations of our lives not as ends, but as beginnings. Perhaps the changes we fear are, in truth, the necessary distortions that lead to new creation. Perhaps the story of colliding galaxies is, at its heart, a story about change, inevitable, beautiful, and filled with possibility. And in this story, we are not just the observers, we are part of the dance. The collision of galaxies, vast and graceful, does not end with the meeting of stars or the merging of supermassive black holes, rather, it begins there. For what emerges from this dance is not only a new shape in the fabric of space, but a new rhythm, a different kind of cosmic breath, slower and deeper, echoing across eons. In the wake of such a monumental event, space itself is altered not just in form, but in function, in the opportunities it offers for birth, for silence, for becoming. After the galactic spirals have intertwined, when their luminous arms have been stretched, torn, and reknitted into something new, a peculiar calm settles over the scene. The starbursts that once lit up the darkness triggered by clouds of gas collapsing under the pressure of tidal forces begin to fade. What remains are older stars, more stable and less dramatic, glowing like embers in the aftermath of a cosmic storm. The galaxy that emerges from the union of the Milky Way and Andromeda will be more spherical, smoother in outline, less defined by the sweeping arms that once spiraled outward like giant nautilus shells. It will be older not only in time, but in temperament. This new galaxy, sometimes referred to by astrophysicists as Milkdromeda, will possess a different kind of beauty, less vibrant, perhaps, but more serene. It will contain fewer gas clouds for the creation of new stars, having spent much of its material in the fervent star-forming period during the collision itself. But within this quiet, something more subtle unfolds the long, slow aging of a galactic civilization, not in the sense of beings or structures, but of stars and orbits and the ever-turning symmetry of gravity. The remnants of the two supermassive black holes will now have become one, a singular titan at the core of Milkdromeda, pulsing silently with gravity so intense that time itself bends near its edge. Around it, stars will continue to orbit in vast ellipses, and some unlucky few will drift too close, torn apart by tidal forces, their matter spiraling inward in brilliant flares before vanishing forever. These eruptions, known as tidal disruption events, are brief but powerful, illuminating the invisible heart of the galaxy for a moment, revealing the hidden monster at its core. To observers, they serve as reminders that even in the silence of space, power is never far beneath the surface. And still, the galaxy drifts. Milkdromeda, though enormous and radiant, will not remain still after the merger. It, too, will be drawn onward toward the Virgo cluster, the gravitational center of our local supercluster, and beyond that, towards something even stranger. Astronomers have detected that our entire region of space, the local group, the Virgo supercluster, and neighboring clusters, is accelerating toward a mysterious point in the sky, known as the Great Attractor. This enigmatic force lies roughly 200 million light-years away, hidden behind the plane of the Milky Way, in a region of sky so dense with stars and dust that optical telescopes struggle to peer through. And yet, despite its obscurity, its presence is undeniable. Entire galaxies are flowing toward it, as though caught in the invisible current of a river no one can see. What lies at the heart of the Great Attractor remains one of astronomy's most intriguing questions. Some believe it is merely a concentration of galaxy clusters, a natural fluctuation in the cosmic web of matter. Others suggest it might be part of something even more immense, the Shapley supercluster, a gravitational colossus whose influence ripples across hundreds of millions of light-years. And still, some wonder if it is a clue, a fragment of a deeper structure that we have only just begun to sense, a sign that the architecture of the universe is far more interconnected than we thought, that beneath the galaxies and nebulae and radiation fields lies a gravitational framework beyond comprehension. But even as we chase these questions outward, as we reach across billions of light-years with radio waves and mathematical models, we are also brought back inward toward ourselves, toward Earth, toward the fragile complexity that somehow arose in the shadow of stars. Because no matter how far we gaze into the universe, the question always returns, what does this mean for us? The knowledge that our galaxy will collide with another is not a threat in the human sense. It is too distant to disrupt our lives, too slow to register in the span of generations. And yet, it reshapes our perception of time. It invites us to think not in hours or years, but in cycles of galaxies, in gravitational rhythms that stretch across the age of the cosmos. In a way, it liberates us, reminding us that even the most fixed structures are temporary, that even the heavens are not immune to change. It humbles us, too. For all our technologies and maps, we are still passengers in a vessel far larger than anything we can command. The Earth, orbiting the Sun, which orbits the center of the Milky Way, which itself is on a path toward merger, all of it drifting, all of it moving, all of it subject to forces ancient and invisible. And yet, we have something the stars do not. We have awareness. The Andromeda Galaxy has been moving toward us for billions of years, but only in recent decades have we come to understand this. Only now do we have the tools, the spectrometers, the satellites, the equations to see the future written in the motion of light. Only now do we stand on the cusp of a new kind of vision, one that peers not just outward, but forward. If we were to stand beneath the sky 5 billion years from now, assuming some version of humanity still existed, we would see something extraordinary. Andromeda would no longer be a faint smear of light. It would dominate the heavens, larger than the moon, a glowing spiral threading the night with a detail and depth never before seen. Over time, the stars of both galaxies would intermingle, forming a new, blended sky, a horizon reshaped by ancient momentum. What would such a sky mean to the beings who witness it? Would it inspire fear or awe? Would it be understood as science or myth? Perhaps both. For as long as stories have existed, we have looked to the heavens for meaning, interpreting the motions of stars as messages, the appearance of comets as omens, the glow of the moon as a companion in the dark. And perhaps, in that far future, as the galaxies embrace in the slowest of dances, the beings who inherit the Earth, or whatever form it takes, will tell stories of two great spirals who found each other across the void and became one. And if they do, they will not be wrong. Because in the deepest sense, science and myth are not enemies, they are reflections. One seeks truth through measurement, the other through meaning. And both are born of the same desire, to understand where we are and what we are part of. And so, the collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda is more than an astronomical event. It is a symbol of motion, of change, of the ongoing evolution of everything. It is a mirror in which we can see our impermanence and yet also our place in the eternal. For we are not separate from this story. We are written into it, line by line, particle by particle. We are the dust that once circled other stars, the breath of ancient supernovae, the memory of collisions that happened long before Earth formed its oceans or bore its first trees. To live with this knowledge is not to be diminished, it is to be expanded. It is to understand that even though we are brief, we are connected. That even though we are small, we are part of something vast. That even though we may never see the collision with our own eyes, we are already shaped by it in the motion of our stars, in the future of our sky, in the stories we choose to tell beneath the stars that will one day be different. And perhaps that is the most extraordinary thing of all. That from the cold geometry of orbital decay, from the silent pull of gravity across millions of light years, comes a moment of reflection, a recognition of self, not just in a mirror, but in the stars. In the great cosmic timeline, the collision of galaxies is but a single act in an endlessly unfolding play, a performance spanning billions of years, where light itself becomes both the storyteller and the memory of the tale. As the Milky Way and Andromeda inch closer to their inevitable meeting, we find ourselves, here and now, as witnesses to the early whispers of that story, aware of what is coming, even though we will never stand beneath the sky where its final chapters are written. This awareness is something new in the universe. For countless ages, galaxies collided in silence, their stars and black holes merging in the dark, unobserved and unnamed. Now, for the first time, a species exists that can imagine the future of its galaxy, that can predict with startling precision how these titanic structures will twist, distort, and reform millions of years before the first motion becomes visible to the naked eye. This is a triumph of thought, a victory not over nature, but within it. The ability to see far ahead is something our ancestors could not have dreamed of when they first looked up at the sky, carving constellations out of the stars, seeing patterns and meaning where there was only distance and light. To them, the heavens were eternal, fixed, the perfect backdrop to the brief and unpredictable theater of life. It would have been inconceivable to imagine that even these stars, these constellations, would one day vanish, replaced by a new sky, shaped by forces beyond their comprehension. And yet, that is the truth. In a few billion years, the familiar band of the Milky Way, which has stretched across human imagination like a luminous river, will no longer exist. The stars that compose Orion, Cassiopeia, or the Pleiades will be pulled apart, scattered, rearranged in ways that no ancient skywatcher could recognize. The galaxy itself will no longer be the same, transformed into a different form, a single, merged structure, the child of two ancient giants. It is humbling, but also strangely beautiful, to know that permanence is an illusion. Just as mountains erode and seas rise and fall on Earth, the galaxies themselves are sculpted and reshaped by time. In this way, we are no different from them. Our lives, our civilizations, our histories, they too are temporary patterns in a larger flow, brief arrangements of energy and matter that will one day dissolve into something new. Perhaps this is why we tell stories. Stories are our way of reaching beyond time, of carving meaning into the shifting sands of existence. When we speak of the future collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda, we are not simply describing a physical event. We are creating a narrative of transformation, one that mirrors our own search for identity and continuity. But there is another way to see this event not just as a distant astronomical forecast, but as a mirror of cosmic creation itself. For when galaxies collide, they become engines of birth. The immense gravitational forces at play compress vast clouds of hydrogen and helium, the raw material of stars, into dense knots that ignite into new suns. These stars burn hot and bright, illuminating the merging galaxies with waves of ultraviolet light. Nebulae, glowing and restless, give birth to clusters of stars, many of which will live fast and die young, exploding as supernovae that spread heavier elements into the surrounding space. It is from such events that planets are born, and it is from such planets that life, perhaps, can emerge. Could it be that the collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda, far from being a destructive event, might actually sow the seeds of future life across the stars? It is not impossible. In fact, it is likely. Every atom in our bodies was forged in the interior of ancient stars, stars that lived and died long before the sun was born. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, the oxygen in our lungs, all of it was once part of the stellar core of some long-extinct sun. When we gaze at the stars, we are, in a sense, looking back at the forges that built us, the factories of matter that made consciousness possible. And so, when galaxies collide, the process of star-making and element forging continues, scattering the universe with the building blocks of life. The event we fear, the collision, is, in fact, the same kind of event that once made our existence possible. This realization changes the way we see ourselves. We are not separate from these vast cosmic events. We are the product of them. We are the dust left behind by ancient collisions, gathered, cooled, and awakened into thought. But as we look forward to the future of our galaxy, we must also confront a deeper question. Will we still be here to see it? Will life on Earth or its descendants survive the billions of years between now and then? The Sun, our constant companion, will not. In about 5 billion years, it will exhaust the hydrogen in its core, swelling into a red giant that will engulf Mercury and Venus, and perhaps even the Earth itself. Long before the galaxies collide, our planet may already be uninhabitable, scorched by the growing heat of a dying star. Unless, of course, we find a way to leave. This is where speculation and science intertwine, where our vision of the future begins to expand beyond astronomy and into possibility. If humanity, or whatever we become, can endure the next few million years, if we can spread beyond our home planet, beyond even our home star, then the collision of galaxies might not be a distant curiosity, but a spectacle we can witness from safe distances, from worlds far beyond Earth's fragile orbit. Imagine, for a moment, standing on the surface of a distant exoplanet, orbiting a star that was once part of Andromeda. Imagine looking up at a sky filled with both the old stars of the Milky Way and the new ones born from the collision. Imagine the horizon glowing with nebulae, the night ablaze with colors our ancestors could never have dreamed of. Would such a sky inspire us to feel small or infinite? Would it remind us of how far we have come or how far we still have to go? These are not scientific questions, but human ones. They reach beyond mathematics and into meaning. And yet, in a way, they are no less important. For science, without meaning, is a map without a destination, a set of coordinates without a story. Perhaps this is why the collision of galaxies resonates so deeply with us. It is not only a physical event, it is a metaphor for connection, for the blending of histories, for the way in which the universe, despite its coldness and vastness, is always drawing itself together. It is worth remembering that collisions like this are not rare. The universe is filled with galaxies that have merged or are in the process of merging. Some of the most beautiful galaxies we see through our telescopes with their twisted arms and glowing cores are products of ancient unions. We look at them not as catastrophes, but as masterpieces. Could we see our own future merger that way, not as an end, but as an act of creation? Perhaps that is the challenge, not to fear the inevitable, but to learn from it, to recognize that change, even on a cosmic scale, is not loss, but transformation, that the galaxies are not being destroyed, but reborn. And in this rebirth, there is a strange and quiet promise that even in the cold, dark reaches of space, creation never truly stops. It only changes form. In the distant shadows of space, long after stars have died and their light has faded into the fabric of the cosmos, something lingers, a trace, a ripple, an afterglow. It is not sound nor substance, but the memory of movement, the quiet hum of gravity, still shaping galaxies even as they grow silent. For in the wake of collision, the universe does not rest. It shifts, adapts, and continues to breathe in a language too slow for the human ear, too vast for the human eye, and yet, somehow, deeply familiar. After the Milky Way and Andromeda complete their ancient embrace, the result will be a galaxy unlike either of its parents, a smooth, glowing sphere of stars suspended in the void, without spiral arms or defined structure, its shape more like a pearl than a pinwheel. The astronomers who first modeled this transformation called it Milkomeda, a name that fuses the two legacies into one, as though to say, something has ended, yes, but something else has begun. What remains within Milkomeda are stars, yes, trillions of them, moving in new orbits, casting new constellations across the sky, but also memory, encoded not in books or stones, but in gravity, in the swirling echoes of what once was. The core of the new galaxy will likely host a single, unimaginably massive black hole, formed by the union of the central black holes from both the Milky Way and Andromeda. It will sit in perfect stillness, not as a destroyer, but as an anchor, the hidden heart of the galaxy's dance. Around it, stars will orbit for billions more years. Planets will continue to spin. Some of them may be barren and frozen, others scorched and broken, but among them, perhaps, a few will hold oceans. A few will hold air. And maybe, just maybe, one of them will hold life, not as we know it, but life nonetheless. Born not despite the merger, but because of it. It is a strange idea that something so vast, so ancient, so distant from the daily pulse of human life could carry within it the seeds of becoming. And yet, this is the story that the universe seems to tell over and over again, from death, rebirth, from silence, sound, from the dark, light. Galaxies collide, and the result is not only disorder, but creation. We have seen this in our own past. The Earth itself was once molten and inhospitable, formed in the chaos of planetary collisions and the remnants of dying stars. It was struck by a wandering body the size of Mars, a cataclysmic impact that tore part of the planet away and created the Moon. That violence, that devastation, did not end the Earth, it shaped it. And in its wake, life found its foothold. So perhaps we should not fear cosmic collisions. Perhaps they are not intrusions into the peace of the cosmos, but vital chapters in its ongoing evolution, events that stretch the boundaries of what is possible, reshaping the conditions in which stars form, in which molecules bond, in which complexity can arise. And if the Earth could emerge from such chaos, if life could rise from its scattered dust and carbon, then who are we to say that other worlds, in other galaxies, could not do the same? Somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy today, there may be planets orbiting red dwarfs or yellow suns, warmed by light that took 2 million years to reach us. We do not yet know what those worlds look like. We do not yet know if they harbor oceans or storms or beings who wonder about the stars. But what we do know is that in the coming merger, their stars will be swept into new patterns, their night skies rewritten just as ours will be. And in this mutual transformation, a kind of unity is born. The two galaxies, which have moved separately through space for so long, each carrying their own histories, will become one. Their stars will mix, their paths will merge, their black holes will spiral and coalesce, and their planetary systems will move through a new gravitational landscape, not as strangers, but as parts of a shared whole. This process will not be clean or simple. It will take billions of years. There will be distortions, disruptions, unpredictable consequences. Some stars will be flung from the galaxy entirely, becoming rogue stars, exiled into the intergalactic void. These stars will travel alone for eternity, unattached to any system, bearing no allegiance to any structure, solitary wanderers in the deep. And even the outcasts, have their place in the story. For in the universe, nothing is wasted. Every movement, every shift, every loss is absorbed into the greater flow, like eddies in a river that always moves toward the sea. Perhaps we are like those stars, a species adrift, seeking order in the chaos, meaning in the silence. Perhaps our civilizations are like small galaxies, colliding with ideas, reshaping through contact, losing some parts and gaining others. We too are transformed by what we meet. We too are changed by the gravity of others. It is a comforting thought that the same laws which govern stars and galaxies also shape our own stories. That the physics of merging galaxies, attraction, turbulence, renewal, might also describe what it means to live, to grow, to evolve. For just as galaxies collide and become something new, so do we. And if one day we look up and see the blended sky of Milkomeda, if we are still here, or if our legacy survives in any form, we will be seeing not the end of an era, but the unfolding of a new one. A sky filled with both memory and promise. A sky that says, you are part of this. You always were. Even now, the universe is expanding. The galaxies beyond our local group are racing away, driven by the force of dark energy, an invisible pressure that accelerates the expansion of space itself. One day, in a future so distant it cannot be truly imagined, the galaxies outside Milkomeda will have vanished beyond the cosmic horizon, moving faster than the speed at which light can reach us. By then, our sky will be dark again. Not because stars have gone out, but because they are too far away to see. The universe will seem smaller, quieter. Astronomers in that far future may believe that Milkomeda is the entire universe, unaware of the grand structure that once was. Unless we leave a message. Unless we send out records, markers, pulses, signals that say we knew, that we understood the vastness, the pattern, the beauty, that we were here, that we saw Andromeda approach, and we imagined what it meant. And perhaps, in a far corner of Milkomeda, someone will find it. Not a blueprint or a warning, but a story, a reflection of our time, our vision, our attempt to reach beyond the brevity of our years. Because in the end, what we leave behind may not be structures or machines, but understanding a moment of clarity in the flow of time, a constellation drawn in thought. And what more could we hope for? To know that we were part of something grand and that we recognized it, to see the galaxies embrace and to understand the beauty of their transformation, to live in the brief, brilliant moment before the stars rearrange themselves and to call it enough. Long after the stars have shifted their places in the heavens, long after the memory of constellations has faded from the minds of those who once named them, the universe will continue unfolding, not with haste, but with quiet, determined rhythm. The galaxies will merge, the stars will reorient themselves into a new gravitational order. The great black holes at their hearts will spiral inward, drawn together by the warping of space-time itself, and in the dark, a deeper silence will settle over what was once a sky full of familiar patterns. But while the stars rearrange above, something more elusive takes place beneath the surface of cosmic phenomena, something not visible in telescopes or written in gravitational equations. It is the echo of consciousness reflecting upon itself, the awareness that arises when the universe finally becomes capable of wondering about its own structure. For in that brief window of time between ignorance and extinction, we fragile, temporary, evolving creatures became the mirror through which the cosmos sees itself. What does it mean to be that mirror? What does it mean to know that galaxies collide, that stars are born in the wreckage, that light travels across millions of years, only to touch the eye of an observer who may not yet understand what they see? In 1917, Albert Einstein introduced the idea of the cosmological constant, a term in his equations of general relativity that implied the universe might be static and unchanging. He would later call it his greatest blunder, for we now know the universe is not static. It expands, it stretches. The fabric of space itself grows, driven by something we call dark energy, a force not yet understood, invisible, but clearly present, pushing the galaxies apart at an accelerating rate. This expansion means that one day, not only will the Milky Way and Andromeda merge, but the rest of the universe will begin to slip away, receding beyond the reach of light, beyond any signal we could ever send or receive. In 100 billion years, only the remnants of our merged galaxy, Milkomeda, will remain visible. The night sky will grow dimmer, emptier. The universe, from within that isolated galaxy, may appear lonely, finite, even static. And so we are living, in this moment of cosmic adolescence, in an age of visibility, a rare and fleeting period where we can see the universe not only as it is, but as it was. We can look back through light and distance, see the afterglow of the Big Bang, trace the birth of galaxies, witness the redshift of light stretching across billions of years. We are, in this way, surrounded by ghosts, not of the dead, but of the distant, the ancient, the still becoming. If the future observers within Milkomeda do not know of the universe's expansion, if they cannot see other galaxies to confirm it, they may believe the cosmos has always been as it is, quiet, finite, serene. They may look at their sky and miss the vastness that once surrounded them. They may build cosmologies that, while beautiful, are incomplete. And unless they find the traces we left behind, the messages, the measurements, the maps, they may never know the truth. That they are the remnants of something much larger, much brighter, much more intricate. This idea that understanding can vanish is perhaps more haunting than the collision of galaxies itself. Civilizations rise, build their models of reality, reach for meaning, and sometimes they are interrupted by catastrophe, by forgetfulness, by time. And yet, even in that loss, there is continuity. For while ideas may fade, the structures they describe remain. Gravity continues to operate whether or not we understand it. The stars still burn even when no one is watching. The galaxies still merge whether or not anyone names them. And in that silent continuation lies a kind of peace, the knowledge that we are not required for the cosmos to unfold. And yet, we are invited to witness it, to participate in it, to understand it, and that is what makes our moment so extraordinary. We are the rare conjunction of matter and meaning, of biology and wonder, of flesh and thought. We are the ones who ask, and in asking, we change the shape of the question. Not because the universe alters itself for us, but because we begin to see more clearly how vast, how intricate, how mysterious it truly is. When we talk about galactic collisions, we often focus on the drama, the merging of stars, the compression of gas, the luminous arcs of light stretching into intergalactic space. But there is another kind of collision, one that takes place in the mind. The meeting of ideas, the crash of certainty against mystery. The moment when what we thought we knew encounters something entirely new, and we are forced to reimagine our place in the world. The first time we saw Andromeda moving toward us, it was not with dread, but with awe. The shift in its light, the blue shift, revealed its approach. While most galaxies are moving away from us, red shifting into the long wavelengths of space, Andromeda was doing something else. It was coming closer. Not fast, by human standards just over 100 kilometers per second, but inevitable, irresistible, patient. And now we know it will reach us. Not tomorrow, not next century, but soon, in galactic terms, just a few billion years. We know this with the confidence of physics. with the measurements of Doppler shifts and simulations that span cosmic time. We have traced the dance, calculated the angles, predicted the moments of closest contact. We have watched virtual galaxies collide in computers, slow ballet rendered in bits and probabilities, and every simulation tells the same story. This is coming. But what will we do with that knowledge? Not much, perhaps not in the immediate sense. We cannot prevent the merger. We do not need to. It is not a threat to our existence in any traditional sense. But in another way, it changes everything. It places our entire civilization into a larger narrative, not just of a species on a pale blue dot, but of a spiral galaxy, billions of years old, on a path toward union with another. It reframes our importance not to diminish it, but to contextualize it. We are not the center, but we are part of the story. And isn't that enough? Perhaps the greatest gift of astronomy is not in telling us where we are, but in reminding us how much more there is, that behind every galaxy is another, that beyond every mystery lies another horizon, that our understanding is always incomplete, always expanding just like the universe itself. And in this process of expansion, both internal and external, we collide with questions that are not easily answered. What is consciousness? What is time? Why does anything exist at all? We look at galaxies colliding, and somewhere deep inside, we recognize the metaphor that life, too, is a merger of forces, of histories, of contradictions. We are not separate from these processes. We are born of them. We are the ripples of old stars, the memory of exploded suns, the dust of ancient planets, reassembled into thought. And so we listen, we measure, we imagine. We build stories not just to survive, but to connect, to draw lines between what we see and what we feel, to map the cosmos not only in light years and parsecs, but in meaning, in curiosity, in wonder. And if the day comes, however distant, when eyes unlike ours look up at a blended sky, when beings we cannot imagine see the light of a sky reformed by the collision of Milky Way and Andromeda, may they too wonder, may they ask, may they feel what we feel now, not fear, but reverence. Because in the end, the galaxies are not just merging. In the silent stretches between galaxies, where light becomes a whisper and gravity threads its invisible fingers through the dark, there exists a space not defined by stars or matter, but by the possibilities they leave behind. These are the voids, the in-betweens, the intergalactic corridors that separate great structures like the Milky Way and Andromeda, the stage upon which their slow, gravitational ballet unfolds. And while we have spoken much of the galaxies themselves, their stars, their orbits, their collisions, there is something equally profound in the emptiness between them. For the universe, in its vastness, is mostly made of space. Not stars, not gas, not dust, but the unlit regions where nothing dwells, and where, paradoxically, the future of everything is decided. It is from this quiet void that the Milky Way and Andromeda were born, not as complete entities, but as the result of gravitational gathering, as the early universe cooled and dark matter wove its invisible scaffolding into patterns we now call the cosmic web. Galaxies form not randomly, but at the intersections of these filaments, bright nodes in a structure too immense to visualize in any human scale. And so the story of collision begins far earlier than the galaxies themselves. It begins with the dark matter, that unseen form of mass which neither emits nor reflects light, but whose presence can be inferred from its gravitational effects. It is this dark matter that shapes the path of galaxies, dictates their clustering, and ultimately sets them on trajectories that, across billions of years, lead them into contact. Andromeda's path toward us is not a mistake. It is the consequence of structure, of the hidden geometry of the universe itself. But what is structure without awareness? As the two galaxies approach, we ephemeral inhabitants of a single ordinary star system have become aware of the event long before it happens. And this awareness, fragile and recent though it may be, gives rise to something astonishing: preparation, imagination, even reverence. We are no longer just watching stars. We are participating in a story that began before us and will outlast us. We are observers, yes, but not passive ones. We take in the light, the data, the patterns, and we transform them into understanding, into meaning. And that meaning echoes in more than scientific papers or computer simulations. It echoes in our art, our music, our longing for permanence in a world, a universe where everything changes. There is something undeniably human about trying to preserve memory against the erosion of time. We carve names into rock, inscribe data on golden records, send signals into the void, not because we expect someone to find them, but because we want the universe to know that we were here, that we saw, that we felt, that we tried to understand. And perhaps, in the far future, when the sky has changed and Milkamita is all that remains, someone will stumble upon those fragments, a pulse encoded in hydrogen spin, a satellite drifting in eternal orbit, a pattern in the background radiation that speaks not of physics, but of awareness. Perhaps they will wonder about us as we now wonder about them, and in that wondering, the chain will be unbroken. But what of us now, here, in this brief epoch of clarity? There are moments in history where civilizations turn inward, and others where they reach outward. And it seems we are poised between the two, with telescopes aimed at stars and mirrors held up to ourselves, trying to determine not just what lies beyond the galaxy, but what lies within us. The approaching merger of the Milky Way and Andromeda offers more than a spectacle. It offers a lens through which to see ourselves differently, to recognize that we are not isolated creatures on a lonely world, but manifestations of a universe in motion-conscious dust that arose from collisions long past, now preparing to witness one in the making. And as the stars converge, we too must consider what it means to come together as species, as minds, as fleeting expressions of something far older than language. Galactic collisions do not happen suddenly. They take billions of years, and during that time, structures shift. Galaxies are not obliterated, they are redefined. The graceful arms of spirals unravel. The elegant disks warp and fold. Cores stretch toward each other, drawn by gravity and destiny alike. Star clusters form, gas clouds collapse, and somewhere in the quiet aftermath, new stars begin to shine. Perhaps this, too, is how growth happens, not through stability, but through disruption. It may be tempting to see cosmic collisions as rare, as exceptional, but they are not. In the observable universe, billions of galaxies are on paths toward each other. Some are mid-collision now, their luminous trails visible through deep space observatories. Others have already merged, leaving behind elliptical remnants that glow with the light of ancient stars and the heat of ongoing gravitational realignment. Even within the Milky Way, the signs of previous mergers are everywhere. Stellar streams arc through the galactic halo remnants of smaller galaxies that were consumed long ago. Some stars orbit at odd angles or carry strange chemical signatures, revealing their extragalactic origins. Our own history is one of assimilation, of encounters, of cosmic blending. We are, in every way, a product of collisions. And this knowledge brings with it a shift in perspective, one that frees us from the illusion of permanence and instead opens us to the beauty of transformation. Just as stars are born, so are they reborn, scattered, reformed, rekindled in different skies. And just as galaxies merge, so too do ideas, cultures, histories. We are not exempt from the universe's patterns. We are shaped by them. There is something comforting in that, something sacred even, that we are part of a cycle so vast, so intricate, that no single life can grasp it, and yet each life is an expression of it. We are not observers of a separate drama, but characters within it, luminous, temporary, meaningful. And as the galaxies spiral toward their embrace, we might pause to reflect on what it means to belong. To belong not only to Earth, not only to a species or a century, but to a universe that is itself alive with change. To belong to a cosmos that does not stand still, but flows with light, with time, with gravity and possibility. And in that belonging, perhaps we find something we did not expect. Not fear, not insignificance, but grace, because to be part of something so vast, so ancient, so unrepeatable, is not to be small. It is to be necessary. The stars will continue their slow arcs through space. The black holes will continue to spiral and merge. The gases will cool, the dust will settle, the sky will change. And through it all, there will be thought. Somewhere in the hearts of conscious beings, here or elsewhere, now or later, there will be questions. There will be wonder. There will be eyes turned to the sky, watching, always watching, as the galaxies move toward each other, as the future unfolds, one light year at a time. The night sky, as seen from Earth, is a painting in motion, but it is a motion too slow for the human eye to perceive a silent waltz choreographed across eons, guided not by instinct, but by invisible forces etched into the fabric of space-time itself. To us, it appears frozen a tapestry of pinprick stars, stitched in place since the first gaze of our ancestors. But in truth, the heavens are shifting, rearranging, evolving with every passing second. Galaxies are not still, they roam. The Milky Way, majestic and immense, is not a lonely traveler. Andromeda, too, is not adrift by chance. They are pulled together by gravity, that gentle tyrant of the cosmos, not out of conflict, but out of inevitability. The dance is already underway. It always was. But what does a collision mean when played out on a stage so large that each step lasts millions of years? To call it a crash would be to impose the scale of human catastrophe on an event that unfolds in near silence. Stars, despite their number, are mostly empty space separated by vast expanses of vacuum, like distant lanterns in a boundless desert. When galaxies collide, the stars themselves rarely meet. Instead, they pass like ghosts through each other, their paths altered subtly, their orbits redrawn in the shared gravity of their converging hosts. It is not violence, but choreography, and from this celestial rearrangement, new beauty is born. As the two galaxies approach, the tidal forces grow stronger. Great arcs of stars are pulled away from their spirals, stretched into luminous bridges between the two titans. These tidal tails, glowing ribbons of stellar light, span hundreds of thousands of light years, like threads sewn between galaxies, stitching together their destinies. Gas clouds, less reserved than stars, do collide, and when they do, they compress, collapse, ignite. Star formation surges. New suns are born in luminous bursts, entire stellar nurseries kindled by the friction of gravitational embrace. The universe, indifferent to our labels, uses collision not as an end, but as a means to generate renewal. Galaxies are not destroyed, they are transformed. Astronomers call this process a major merger, when two galaxies of roughly equal mass combine, and from such mergers, new forms arise. The delicate spirals that once defined them begin to unravel, replaced by elliptical structures, smooth, featureless ovals of stars that glow with the quiet dignity of age. The collision erases the past, but in its place, it writes a future. And yet, amidst this cosmic retelling, something profound happens in the galactic hearts. Both the Milky Way and Andromeda harbor supermassive black holes at their centers, objects of incomprehensible density, each millions of times the mass of the Sun. As the galaxies merge, so too do their central black holes begin their spiral toward one another, sinking slowly toward coalescence, radiating gravitational waves across space, gentle ripples in the fabric of reality that travel outward at light speed, whispering the story of their union. When they finally meet, in the shadowy heart of the newborn galaxy, the resulting event will be a climax of gravitational power, a flash not of light, but of warping, bending, ringing space. We may never witness that moment directly, for it may be too distant, too veiled, but we can model it, predict it, feel the gravity of its coming. And in that knowledge lies something humbling, that even the greatest objects in our galaxy, ancient anchors of matter and light, are destined for merger. Nothing stands still. Nothing lasts as it is, and yet everything continues. In 2015, humanity detected gravitational waves for the first time, confirming a prediction made a century earlier by Albert Einstein. The waves, faint but real, were the result of two smaller black holes merging far away. That detection, LIGO's first, opened a new era in astronomy. For the first time, we were not seeing the universe, but feeling it. Like blind fingers tracing the vibrations of a bell, we could now sense the invisible. And so we listen, for future waves, for the deep song of supermassive black holes, for the music of the spheres, not in metaphor, but in physics, spacetime itself as the instrument, struck by the movements of giants. The collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda is not merely an event, it is a chapter in a universal composition, and we are living within its overture. In another kind of collision, we have found meaning, the merging of human minds with the cosmos they observe. For in every discovery, in every charted orbit, every simulated merger, every new telescope sent beyond the sky, we draw closer not only to the stars, but to ourselves. It is not the stars alone we seek. It is our reflection in them. To know that galaxies collide is to know that change is law, that transformation is written into the bones of the universe, and that nothing, not even the most massive structures we can imagine, is immune to the pull of time. And yet, how strange it is, how beautiful, that we, temporary, soft-bodied, curious beings have come to understand this. That in the silence between pulses of a beating heart, we contemplate the merging of galaxies. That in the soft glow of a telescope screen, we decipher the secrets of stars that will outlive every memory we have ever made. Perhaps this is what it means to evolve, not merely to survive, but to awaken, to turn our eyes upward, again and again, and ask not only how the heavens move, but why we care that they do. And maybe, in the folds of that question, we find something sacred. Not in the galaxies themselves vast and indifferent, but in the fact that we see them at all, in the fact that light, having traveled for millions of years, is finally received by a conscious mind, in the fact that dust, having burned into stars and exploded and coalesced into planets, now dreams and wonders and reaches. We are the collision. We are the result of countless mergers, atomic, stellar, biological, cultural. We are born of impact, and we carry forward the momentum, not toward destruction, but toward understanding. And if the day comes when another species, somewhere in the future Milkomeda, stares out into the sky and sees a world different than ours, a sky rewritten by merger, a galaxy reborn, may they too feel what we feel now, not fear, not loss, but awe. Because in that moment, they will not just be looking outward. They will be remembering us. They will be remembering the ones who watched it coming, who named the stars, who mapped the path, who whispered to the dark. And perhaps they will whisper back. In the deep silence of interstellar night, there are moments when the mind drifts into visions that are neither memory nor imagination, but something in between, a knowing that feels older than time, as if we are remembering something we never lived, yet always carried within us. Perhaps that is what happens when we think of the galaxies, when we imagine their slow dance across the darkness, their arms stretching like great cosmic tides, reaching toward each other not in haste, but in timeless purpose. They are not just collections of stars, nor simply engines of physics. They are echoes of creation, unfolding still. Each spiral is a fingerprint of gravity etched in starlight. Each halo a whisper of ancient collisions. And when two galaxies approach, when their spirals curve inward like lovers drawn across the void, we are not watching the start of destruction. We are witnessing the continuation of a language that has been spoken since the universe began, a dialect of motion, silence, and inevitability. The Milky Way and Andromeda, two spiraled giants bound by dark matter and fate, are not anomalies. They are participants in a cosmic pattern. The lambda cold dark matter model, the prevailing theory in cosmology, predicts such encounters as a natural consequence of the universe's expansion and structure. And so, within this framework, the merger of these galaxies is not only likely, it is necessary. Gravity has no room for coincidence. It pulls, it binds, it resolves. And yet, we do not observe this inevitability with cold detachment. We feel it, we name it. We imagine what it might look like not from a telescope's eye, but from within, from a world orbiting, a star caught in the current, from a vantage point where the sky changes, not in centuries, but in lifetimes. What would we see if we could remain generation after generation to witness the sky rewritten? In the beginning, only subtle changes would hint at what's to come. The great band of the Milky Way, once a familiar arch across the night, might begin to shift, tilted against the old constellations, the stars no longer quite where they should be. And then, on the far edge of the sky, a new spiral might appear, faint at first, like a ghost of light, then brighter, fuller, until Andromeda itself becomes a second Milky Way above our heads. Two galaxies, two heavens, one destiny. And still, life might go on. The Earth would spin, orbit, rotate around its aging sun. Civilizations might rise and fall, unaware of the cosmic overture building above them. But for those who watched, who listened, the sky would begin to tell a different story. One of approach, one of transformation, one of becoming something new. The galaxies would not collide in a single moment, but over millions of years. Their halos would touch first vast clouds of dark matter and scattered stars mingling in the outermost regions. These invisible borders would blur, tugging at each other's structure. Then, tidal forces would begin their slow sculpting, warping the outer arms, drawing streams of stars across the void, creating bridges of light that shimmer like silk across space. Eventually, the cores would pass, not in a violent crash, but in a near miss of monumental scale. A galactic flyby. The spirals would twist, deform, sling their stars into eccentric orbits. Massive shockwaves would ripple through gas clouds, collapsing them into bursts of star formation. It would be an age of birth amid chaos, a renewal born not of peace, but of motion. Some stars would be cast adrift, flung into intergalactic exile, solitary wanderers in the great darkness. Others would find new homes, captured by gravity's invisible hand, circling new centers, bound to a destiny they did not choose. And all the while, the black holes at each galactic heart would spiral inward, their orbits shrinking, their dance tightening, until at last they merged into a single entity, a black hole heavier than any the universe had yet seen in this corner of space. The energy of such a merger would ripple through the fabric of space-time, a final punctuation mark on a long, quiet sentence written in mass and motion. And what of Earth? What of humanity? By then, the sun may have changed. It may have grown larger, hotter, as it inches toward its red giant phase. Earth's oceans may have boiled away, its atmosphere lost, its surface scorched. Life, as we know it, may no longer endure on this planet. Or perhaps, against all odds, we will have found a way to persist, to move beyond our cradle, to scatter among the stars like seeds in solar wind, to become more than the sum of our origins. Perhaps we will witness the collision not as passive observers, but as travelers, chroniclers of cosmic history, telling the story of two galaxies who fell into each other and were reborn. Or perhaps others will tell it. For who can say we are the only minds to gaze upward and wonder? The sheer timescale of this event defies comprehension. It is measured not in generations or millennia, but in epochs. It reminds us how brief our presence is, how delicate. And yet, in that fragility, there is also wonder. For it is precisely our brevity that makes our awareness so miraculous. That we are here now, able to measure, to simulate, to imagine what the future sky might hold that is extraordinary. The ancient philosopher Heraclitus once said, "Everything flows and nothing abides." The same could be said of galaxies. The same could be said of us. We are part of this flow of time, of gravity, of light. We arise from it, and we return to it. And if galaxies collide and change shape, if they sacrifice their spirals to become something new, perhaps we too can see change, not as loss, but as transformation. We cling to what is known, to the shapes of constellations, to the lines of the Milky Way, to the permanence of our maps. But the universe does not cling. It expands, it collides, it evolves. And in doing so, it creates new things not in spite of destruction, but through it. Imagine a sky where Orion is gone, replaced by patterns we have no names for. Imagine a night where every star you know has shifted place. Imagine a galaxy reborn, not a memory of the Milky Way, but a child of its collision, a new spiral painted in the dust of its ancestors. Would you fear it? Or would you name it? Would you remember us? The stars will not wait. Their paths are written in momentum and mass. But we can choose what we do with our moment. We can choose to wonder, to understand, to listen. And as the galaxies drift together, as the sky prepares to write a new story in light, we, the fleeting, the fragile, the aware, we can choose to be not only observers, but participants. Not in the collision itself, but in the story of it, in the meaning of it, and in the poetry it leaves behind. There is a kind of silence that only the universe knows, a silence, not born of absence, but of distance, of vastness, of scale so immense that sound itself is lost before it can begin. In this silence, galaxies move. In this silence, stars are born and die. And in this silence, we listen not with ears, but with instruments, with models, with minds trained to hear the patterns that emerge from the deep. In the centuries to come, as the Milky Way and Andromeda draw ever closer, our descendants, or perhaps our successors, may look to the sky with new senses, using tools that do not yet exist to map the shifting arcs of starlight. They will know what we only imagine. They will see the beginnings of the merger not as an abstract prediction, but as reality unfolding. But even now, we prepare. Scientists have already charted the paths of these galaxies using data from the Gaia Space Observatory, mapping the motion of stars with exquisite precision. Through Gaia's eyes, we see the gravitational pull at work the way Andromeda approaches at roughly 110 kilometers per second on a trajectory that will lead to collision in about 4.5 billion years. We can simulate the future sky, painting projections of what Earth's heavens will look like as Andromeda swells in brightness and size, becoming the dominant shape above the horizon. And yet, no matter how precise our predictions, there will always remain a veil, a soft uncertainty woven into the fabric of astrophysics. For galaxies are not solid objects. They are symphonies of particles and waves, governed by laws we understand only in part. Dark matter, which makes up most of their mass, cannot be seen. Its presence is known only through its gravity, through the way it bends light, binds galaxies, and shapes the large-scale structure of the universe. It is the unseen scaffolding upon which the visible cosmos is built. And it is dark matter, more than any single star, that determines how this merger will proceed. In every simulation, in every visualization of Milkomeda, the galaxy that will be born from this union, dark matter plays the silent conductor, orchestrating the collapse, the blending, the settling of spirals into an elliptical form. Without it, the galaxies would not collide as they do. They might pass like ships in the night, unaltered, their fates unentwined. But gravity does not allow escape. And so the merger is written. And yet, amid the mathematics, the simulations, the billions of virtual stars run through supercomputers in vast grids of possibility, there is something else, something unmeasurable. Wonder. The same wonder that moved the ancients to map the constellations, that led Copernicus to question the heavens, that inspired Einstein to imagine light traveling on curved paths through spacetime. It is wonder, more than data, that keeps our gaze turned upward. Imagine a future being, whether human or other, living on a world circling a sun that survived the merger, perhaps relocated by some future effort to preserve habitability. That being might walk beneath a sky where the familiar patterns of stars are long gone, where the constellations of Earth's mythologies are forgotten, replaced by new shapes, new stories. Perhaps they will not know the name Milky Way nor Andromeda. Perhaps they will speak only of the one of the galaxy that is, not the galaxies that were. And yet, if they search their archives, they may find traces, images stored in quantum crystals, data preserved through cataclysm and renewal. They may find us not in person, not in presence, but in thought, in memory. They may hear our voices describing the coming dance. They may feel the echo of our awe. In this way, we become ancestors not by blood, but by curiosity. And as they look upward, perhaps they will ask, as we ask, what lies beyond. What forces guide the shapes of galaxies? What creates the order we observe in the universe? Are we the only ones to wonder? These questions are not new. The idea of cosmic order dates back millennia. The Greek philosopher Anaximander envisioned the universe as a series of concentric wheels. The ancient Chinese spoke of the celestial sphere. The Mayan and Babylonian astronomers mapped the heavens with astonishing accuracy, blending myth and science into a unified sky. And today, in laboratories beneath mountains and observatories atop deserts, we continue the same pursuit, refining it, expanding it, but never abandoning it. What drives the formation of galaxies? Why spirals? Why halos? Why collisions? These are not idle questions. They lie at the heart of cosmology, the study of origins, of structure, of destiny. One prevailing theory is that the early universe, after the Big Bang, contained tiny fluctuations in density quantum ripples frozen into place as space expanded faster than light. Over time, these ripples grew, drawing in matter, forming the seeds of galaxies. Gravity did the rest, pulling gas and dust into clusters, igniting stars, spinning disks. But the picture is not complete. There are still mysteries in the structure of galaxies, why some become spirals, others ellipticals, others irregular, why some collide and merge, while others seem to drift undisturbed. The role of magnetic fields, of black holes, of cosmic filaments, all still under study. And in that study, the act of looking becomes sacred, for it connects us to the past and to the future. It reminds us that even as galaxies collide, even as stars are born and die, the act of observing, of imagining, of caring, that too is part of the universe, and it is no less powerful. There will come a time, perhaps long after we are gone, when the merger is complete, when Milkomeda has settled into its new shape. The spirals will be gone, but their stars will remain, still orbiting, still shining, and perhaps, in some quiet corner of this new galaxy, a being will ask the same questions we ask now. Where did we come from? Why does the universe look as it does? And what does it mean to witness all of this? They may not have the same words, they may not have the same eyes, but the questions, the wonder will remain. Because the story of galaxies is not separate from the story of life. It is the context in which life becomes possible. It is the canvas on which meaning is painted. We often think of ourselves as small, and in many ways we are. A human life is short, a planet is fragile, a civilization is a flicker, but in our minds we hold the galaxies. In our stories, we preserve the stars. In our models, we simulate the merging of cosmic giants. And in doing so, we become large, not in mass, but in imagination. Perhaps this is what the galaxies teach us. That nothing stays the same, that change is not loss, but movement, that collisions are not ends, but beginnings, and that even in the face of unimaginable scale, there is a place for presence, for attention, for wonder. As the stars rearrange themselves above the future Earth or whatever world bears witness, then may that wonder endure, not because the galaxies care, but because we do, and in caring, we become a part of the cosmos we observe, not passive, not separate, but woven into its very unfolding like light drawn into the spiral arms, like dust into stars, like thought into the infinite. We are not watching the universe. We are the universe watching itself. Somewhere beyond the static hush of cosmic background radiation, beyond the radio echoes of dying stars and the light of 1,000 billion suns, lies the quiet aftermath of collisions so vast and slow they seem to transcend the very notion of time. When galaxies merge, they do not do so with the violence of clashing stones, nor the suddenness of lightning, but with the grace of drifting continents, colossal, inevitable, patient. It is a slowness that exists outside our everyday perception, yet within it, entire civilizations may rise and fall before one spiral arm even finishes its arc across the void. In the final stages of a galactic collision, when the chaos begins to settle and the gravitational turbulence gives way to structure once more, a new order emerges, a strange, unfamiliar symmetry rising from the embers of what once was. What began as two independent galaxies, luminous and distinct, gradually dissolves into a single gravitational whole, no longer spiral, no longer recognizable, but something quieter and rounder, a vast elliptical galaxy, a halo of light swelling like a memory beneath the stars. And in this new order, the question arises, what survives? Not merely stars, though many do, not just matter, although it too is conserved in strange orbits and rearranged spirals. What survives, more curiously, are the remnants of structure, the great bones of dark matter, the dense cores of black holes, the invisible fingerprints of history etched into the stars' trajectories. It is in these residual patterns that the past lingers, like echoes in stone. Scientists studying galaxy mergers have discovered that while many stellar systems are scattered in the process, some dense star clusters, globular clusters, remain remarkably intact. These gravitational beacons, composed of hundreds of thousands of stars, act like seeds in a turbulent sea, surviving the upheaval and anchoring the memory of the galaxy's origins. Like fossils in geologic strata, they whisper of ancient spirals, of once separate homes. But among the most intriguing survivors of such mergers are the central black holes, those invisible engines of gravity that sit at the heart of nearly every large galaxy. As the spirals twist together, their black holes spiral too, drawn by mutual attraction until, at last, they collide and merge. releasing torrents of energy and gravitational waves ripples in the very fabric of space-time. These waves are not theoretical fantasy, they are now observable reality. In 2015, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, detected for the first time such a ripple from a black hole merger, a confirmation of Einstein's predictions a century earlier. And so, we now know that when black holes merge, the universe itself trembles softly, but detectably. A vibration too subtle to shake a glass of water, but powerful enough to travel across billions of light years. If two galaxies like the Milky Way and Andromeda merge, their central black holes, each millions of times the mass of our Sun, will one day combine, sending a gravitational pulse that will expand across the cosmos like a cosmic heartbeat. But the story of galactic survival is not only one of stars and black holes, it is also the story of planets. Though the odds of any two stars colliding during a galactic merger are vanishingly small due to the vast distances between them, the orbits of their planets are another matter. As gravitational tides stretch and twist the stellar neighborhoods, some planetary systems may be disturbed. Planets might be ejected from their orbits, flung into interstellar space as rogue worlds, wandering without a sun. Others may spiral inward, consumed by their parent stars or lost in violent transformations of their host systems. And then there are those that might endure. Imagine a planet that rides out the galactic collision, orbiting its star undisturbed through the shifting currents of starlight and gravity. On that world, if life exists, it might observe the sky transforming across generations, myths born from strange lights, ancestral records chronicling the slow warping of constellations. The sky would become a history book exchange in the heavens, a new chapter in an unfolding story. And what of civilizations? If intelligent life survives long enough to witness a galactic merger, not merely in theory but in lived experience, how might it change them? Would they see themselves as citizens of a galaxy no longer theirs alone? Would they create new cosmologies, new philosophies, based on the visible dance of galaxies? Might they even harness the energies of the merger, extracting power from gravitational waves or mining the dense regions of starbirth that emerge in the aftermath? This is no longer the realm of fantasy alone. Scientists like Freeman Dyson once imagined civilizations advanced enough to enclose stars, capturing their energy. Known as Dyson spheres, these hypothetical megastructures symbolize the highest form of technological mastery, beings who no longer fear the dark but sculpt it. In the wake of a galaxy merger, could such civilizations find new stars to envelop, new homes to construct, new ways to inscribe their legacy into the universe? And then perhaps the most haunting question of all arises, not what survives, but who remembers. In time, the merged galaxy will forget it was ever two. Its spiral arms, once distinct, will blur into a smooth, spheroidal glow. Its dust lanes will settle. Its starburst regions will dim. From a distance, it will look serene, eternal. But deep within, the motions of its stars will carry the residual momentum of their origin. Like dancers who have long since forgotten the song they began with, they move still in response to rhythm set in place eons before. Astronomers today can look at elliptical galaxies and detect signs of ancient merger streams of stars moving in patterns that betray the path of former spirals. One day, the same might be said of Milkomeda, the future galaxy born of the Milky Way and Andromeda. Perhaps it will host observers who look back and wonder, what came before this symmetry? Who lived under the two galaxies before they became one? In that wondering, we live again. And so it is with all cosmic stories. What matters most is not the collision, nor the survival, but the remembering. For the universe does not record its history in books or songs. It writes with light and gravity, with hydrogen and spin, with heat and silence. And we, fragile and fleeting, are among its only witnesses capable of telling the story back to itself. Perhaps that is our role, not to command the stars, but to remember them, to turn their motions into meaning, to draw constellations from chaos, to find poetry in the cold fire of their births. As the new galaxy settles, its stars tracing fresh orbits, its light merging into a single glow visible from across the void, the cosmos does not mourn, it does not celebrate, it simply continues. It is we who grant it emotion, significance, beauty. It is we who see not just stars, but stories. Not just collisions, but transformations. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. Enough to justify our smallness. Enough to make our brief existence part of something greater. Enough to echo across time, carried in photons and particles, drifting ever outward, long after we are gone. And so the galaxy becomes whole, not by remaining what it was, but by surrendering to what it must become, a unity born of tension, a silence born of movement, a light born of destruction. It is not an end. It is a beginning shaped like memory. And we who watched, who wondered, who whispered its name into the night air, now part of its shape forever. There is a silence older than stars, a silence that stretched across the darkness long before galaxies had names, long before atoms cooled, long before any structure dared to form. It is the silence of potential, of pure becoming, and within it, the first light flickered not as brightness, but as order. Order from chaos, form from formlessness. It was in this deep breath before time began that the seeds of all galaxies, all stars, all futures were sown. We have wandered far from that origin point, and now, in the cosmic present, our gaze is turned toward the merging of two massive spirals, not as an ending, but as an echo. A reverberation of that first act of formation, repeating itself in new ways. As the collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda deepens, the balance of the night sky will transform beyond recognition. Over millions of years, the familiar constellations Orion, Ursa Major, the Southern Cross will distort, break apart, or disappear completely. Their shapes are illusions of proximity, drawn by human eyes connecting distant fires. But in the vast rearrangement of stars that a galactic merger causes, those illusions will no longer hold. New constellations will be born, new skies will demand new myths. Some of the stars we know will survive, of course. Our sun, unless destroyed or displaced by gravitational chaos, will likely persist for billions of years more. But it will no longer live in the same galactic neighborhood. Its stellar companions will change. The celestial map we've charted will become obsolete, not wrong, just out of date. As if the universe had updated itself, reshaping the coordinates of our cosmic identity. The transformation will not be quick. Nothing in galactic timescales ever is, but the consequences of such a collision ripple across countless systems. There will be regions of intense star formation, stellar nurseries, ignited by compressed gas and dust, thrown into dense pockets by gravitational shock. These starburst regions shine brighter than entire galaxies, glowing with the fever of creation. In such places, stars are born by the millions, brilliant, short-lived giants burning hot and fast. But not all births are joyous. Where there is light, there is shadow. And for every new star, there are remnant shells of gas expelled, cores collapsed into neutron stars or black holes. Galactic mergers increase the likelihood of supernovae, the explosive deaths of massive stars. These detonations are not only destructive, they are alchemical. In their chaos, they forge the heavy elements, iron, gold, uranium, that make rocky planets possible, that make life, perhaps, inevitable. Every atom of calcium in our bones, every particle of iron in our blood, was forged in such a death. So in a way, the future merger of galaxies is not a threat, but a continuation of the same process that created us. We are born of collisions. Some scientists wonder whether the increased activity from a galactic merger might also spark life elsewhere. Not because life emerges from explosions, but because the redistribution of matter and energy changes the environmental conditions of countless worlds. New stars may host new planets and habitable zones. Rogue planets ejected into deep space might be caught by other systems, warmed by different stars. And in that exchange, in that reshuffling of cosmic possibility, life may gain another foothold. Could it be that galactic collisions are not just destructive events, but mechanisms of renewal? This idea may sound poetic, but it has roots in science. Observations of galaxies that have already merged, such as the antennae galaxies or the tadpole galaxy, reveal bursts of star formation and structural complexity. They show that the universe does not grow stale with age. Instead, it reinvents itself, using old material to write new stories. And we, as observers, are learning to read those stories. With modern telescopes, from the Hubble Space Telescope to the James Webb Space Telescope, We can look at galaxies millions of light years away and see snapshots of our own future. Each distant pair of galaxies in mid-collision is a mirror, a time machine. What they are, we will become. What we are, others once were. And so, time bends. We look out and see the past. We look ahead and imagine the future. And in doing so, we bridge the space between what is and what could be. The thought is humbling that galaxies we see colliding today may have already completed their transformation long before our ancestors learned to walk upright. The light we see is ancient, and yet it tells us what's to come. But let us descend from the stars for a moment and return to Earth. On our tiny blue planet, we trace these grand patterns not to escape our fragility, but to understand it. The knowledge of galactic collisions is not merely academic, it is existential. It reminds us that even as we build cities, draw borders, wage wars, and write poems, we do so on a rock hurtling through space, a speck inside a galaxy on a collision course with another. It reminds us that time is vast and we are brief. But it also suggests something more profound, that even in our brevity, we are capable of knowing the story, of understanding the scale, of making meaning from the silence. And that, perhaps, is our greatest miracle. For we are the only known creatures who can say, I exist in a galaxy that will one day merge with another. I live between stars that once belonged to separate spirals. I am a witness to the long future. And isn't that something? To be aware of the universe's unfolding is to participate in it not as passive dust, but as conscious fragments of stardust, with memory, with voice, with awe. Carl Sagan once said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." What a gentle truth. Because when the skies change, when Andromeda fills the horizon, when the Milky Way's spiral arms blur into something new, it will not be the end of something, but a continuation of the story we've been telling since firelight first met cave wall. We look up not just to study, but to feel. We feel the weight of time in the slow drift of galaxies. We feel the fragility of life in the scale of the stars. We feel the sacredness of now this fleeting window between what was and what will be. In the aftermath of the collision, there will be peace. A new galaxy will emerge. Larger, rounder, older, its stars will have forgotten the shapes they once held. But perhaps on some world, around some star, a being will still look up and wonder, was there once more than this? Was I born of many, or only one? And in that wondering, they will touch us, the ones who looked first, who imagined before it happened, who gave shape to the coming sky through thought and story. That is our legacy. Not buildings, not machines, but perspective. The ability to stand beneath a night sky and say, this is not permanent, and that's okay, because nothing in the cosmos is static, and nothing beautiful ever truly ends. The story of the universe does not end with the birth of a new galaxy. Even after spirals collide, after black holes merge and constellations fade, the cosmos continues its slow and patient unfolding. The silence that once welcomed the first light now watches again, as new forms arise from old remnants, as stellar families drift into new alignments, as the map of the heavens is rewritten in quiet revolutions. Milkomeda, the vast elliptical galaxy born from the union of the Milky Way and Andromeda, will not remain unchanged. It too will age. It will mellow like weathered stone, its brilliant star-forming years giving way to dormancy. Over billions of years, the newborn stars will grow old, the gas clouds will be used up or scattered, and the galaxy will begin to fade into a gentler glow, like embers in a fire that once burned fierce and bright. It's a future not of destruction, but of dimming. Cosmologists call this the degenerate era, a distant epoch in which new star formation has mostly ceased, and the galaxies of the universe drift apart under the influence of cosmic expansion. With little gas left to birth stars, only the long-lived red dwarfs will remain, quietly burning in isolation. The bright, massive stars will have long since gone supernova, their cores collapsed into white dwarfs, neutron stars, or black holes. And so the universe darkens, not suddenly, but like a slow dusk, a soft extinguishing of cosmic lanterns. It is here, in this quiet twilight, that another story begins. A story not of what collides, but what remains, what endures, what whispers still, long after the music has played its final chord. Imagine such a universe cold, vast, scattered. The galaxies, once neighbors, have receded from one another beyond the reach of light. Expansion has carried them so far apart that no signal can pass between them. Each galaxy becomes an island, surrounded by darkness, a solitary echo in an ocean of absence. Milkomeda, too, becomes such an island. For any intelligence that might survive into this future, artificial or evolved, biological or quantum, the night sky will be empty of galaxies. There will be no clue, no evidence that the cosmos once teemed with trillions of luminous spirals. The universe will seem small, local, confined to one fading collection of stars. Unless they remember. Unless the beings of that far-flung time have archives, memories, records of the sky as it once was, maps of ancient mergers, records of distant galaxies, stories of the great collision that birthed the very home they now inhabit. In those archives, the stars will live on, the galaxies will live on, and so will we. This is why memory matters. This is why wonder matters. We are not merely charting the heavens for our time, but for all time recording the story of the cosmos before its brightest chapters vanish into redshift and silence. The act of observing becomes a gift, passed forward to a future we will never see. And yet, some believe that even this future, this fading of light, is not the end. There are theories, still debated, that the expansion of the universe may one day reverse. That gravity, dark matter, or some unknown force may halt the outward rush of space and draw everything inward again toward a big crunch, a final collapse into singularity, followed perhaps by another Big Bang. Others suggest a big freeze, in which the universe continues expanding forever, thinning into eternal darkness, where all motion ceases and entropy reigns a cosmos in thermal death. And then there is the strange speculative possibility of the Big Rip, in which dark energy grows stronger with time, eventually tearing apart galaxies, stars, planets, atoms, even the very fabric of space itself. These are not certainties. They are projections drawn from equations, from observations, from patterns we think we understand. But the truth is, we do not yet know the full shape of time. Still, the thought of a universe with an ending, however distant, however abstract, stirs something deep within us, a longing, a kind of cosmic melancholy, not for survival alone, but for meaning. Because if the stars must go out, then let them go out remembered. If the galaxies must fade, then let them fade in story. And if the universe must sleep, then let it dream of those who once gazed up and asked, why? There are those who believe consciousness itself is a phase of the universe, that just as matter gave rise to stars, and stars gave rise to planets, and planets gave rise to life, so too life gives rise to mind, and mind gives rise to something even more. That thought is not a byproduct of the cosmos, but a continuation of it. That in our awareness, the universe becomes aware. In that view, we are not observers of the galaxy merger. We are the galaxy merger, become aware of itself. We are stardust that wonders what stardust can become. We are space that thinks. And so perhaps, in some future, beyond physics, beyond entropy, beyond collapse or freeze or rip, there remains not matter, not light, but memory, pattern, meaning encoded in the quiet hum of what remains, not a voice in the darkness, but the shape of having spoken. Could it be that the true legacy of a galaxy is not its stars, but the thoughts those stars inspired? Could it be that consciousness is the final force, the last echo that defies the silence? These are questions no telescope can answer. They are not etched into spectra or redshifts. They live in poems, in philosophies, in dreams. And yet, they may matter more than equations. Because when the Milky Way and Andromeda finally complete their long dance, when their stars settle into new orbits, when the fireworks of formation subside and peace returns to the heavens, there will be those who remember, if not in mind, then in motion, if not in thought, then in the shape of the galaxy itself. The new Milkomeda will carry the traces of its birth like scars, like veins of gold in ancient rock. Every orbit a signature, every star a syllable, every gravitational wave a whisper from the past. And long after we are gone, When no one is left to speak our names, those whispers may still echo not as sound, but as structure. Not as voice, but as the pattern of stars in the sky. At the edge of everything past the stars that have already burned out, past the collisions that shaped new galaxies, past the long arc of time stretching into silence, there remains a quiet glow. Not of light, not of matter, but of meaning. A faint impression left behind by all that has passed. The afterglow of questions asked and wonder felt. The residue of awareness. We began this journey among spirals, watching two galaxies destined to embrace. We walked the slow path of their merging stars, dancing to ancient gravitational rhythms, black holes circling like sentinels before their final union. We listened to the silence of the universe, broken only by the faint ripple of gravitational waves, by the light of new stars born in the chaos. Now, the collision is complete. The galaxies have become one. The sky has changed forever. And yet, something deeper remains, something older than stars, and perhaps more enduring. The human longing to understand. That longing is not bound by technology or time. It's not contained by science alone, nor by myth. It is a river that flows through both. It begins in curiosity and ends, if it ends at all, in humility. Because in the end, to study the stars is not to conquer them, it is to surrender to something greater. To admit that we are small and brief and made of fragile stuff, and yet capable of grasping the shape of galaxies, of dreaming beyond our sky. The story of the Milky Way and Andromeda is not just astrophysics. It is us. It is the arc of history. The poetry of beginnings meeting ends. The quiet miracle of meaning unfolding in a universe that, by all logic, does not need to mean anything at all, and yet somehow does. Somewhere, billions of years from now, when the sky is no longer ours, when Earth has changed or passed into memory, when Milkomeda has replaced the constellations we once knew, someone may still look up. They may not be human, they may not be carbon-based, but they will look, they will wonder, and they may remember us, not in name perhaps, but in the questions we asked, in the telescopes we built, in the data we gathered and passed forward. They will find our fingerprints in the patterns of observation. They will read the sky not as a blank canvas, but as a conversation one we began. One they continue, because the sky is not finished. The universe is still becoming. Even in its stillness, it grows. Even in silence, it speaks. Perhaps that's what we've been doing all along, learning how to listen. The night has always spoken. We simply learned, over time, to slow down, to grow quiet enough to hear it, to hear the way galaxies hum before they merge, to sense the gravitational embrace of stars that never touch, to see in the cold fire of nebulae the warmth of birth, and in that to see ourselves, not as separate from the cosmos, but as the part that wonders, the part that remembers, the part that dreams. Somewhere in the swirl of Milkomeda, far from its glowing center, orbiting a quiet star, there may one day be a world like ours, a world that survives the collision, that carries on, that writes songs and stories, that sends out signals in the dark, hoping someone, anyone is listening. That world may think it is alone, but it will not be. It will carry the light of all who came before. It will carry the echo of our voices, the trace of our questions, the spark of our awe. And that, perhaps, is the final gift of the galaxies, that from their merging, something new arises. Not just stars, not just structure, but continuity, the slow unfolding of meaning across time, a message that transcends language, a memory without words, a story written in gravity and fire and silence. Carl Sagan once spoke of the pale blue dot, that tiny image of Earth suspended in a sunbeam captured from the edge of the solar system. In it, he saw all of us. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment of human history, all held in a single point of light. If Earth is a pale blue dot, then what is a galaxy? What is a merging of galaxies? Perhaps it is a pale golden swirl, a cosmic signature, a symbol of impermanence and renewal, a reminder that nothing stays as it is, and that this is not a tragedy, but a rhythm of transformation, of endings that lead to beginnings, of stars that die so others may be born, of galaxies that collide not in destruction but in dance, a dance that spans hundreds of thousands of light years, a choreography so vast no music could capture it, except, perhaps, the music of our minds when we let wonder lead the way. So, if you find yourself standing beneath the stars, years or centuries from now, and the sky no longer holds the constellations you once knew, remember that they too were temporary, that all skies are, and that in their change, there is beauty. Look up and say, "This is not the sky I grew up with, but it is no less worthy of my awe." Because awe is never obsolete. It is always timely, always true. And as long as we carry that in heart, in thought, in story, we are never far from the stars. Even when they change, even when they fade, even when galaxies collide,